Good afternoon. Hopefully everybody's not too overwhelmed with all the content that's been provided today. Want some participation from the audience real quick. Who here knows or has purchased some Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? I can't see any hands. There's like 4. All right, we got some out there. Hopefully by the end of our presentation, the majority of you all will have purchased some cryptocurrency. So I'm going to get into the details here. Before I do that, I kind of want to give you a little background of why I'm so passionate about this. This picture here is a picture of my grandpa, Dr. James Mayfield, a professor from the University of Utah. He is 83 years old and to this day is currently actively traveling around the world fighting poverty. He has gone to Nepal, Africa, even a lot of parts of South America, providing potable water, creating schools, and now providing internet access to rural villages, all in an effort to fight poverty. And I'd had a conversation with him to help me understand why does poverty still persist. And he said that a lot of that has to do with the corruption, whether that's in people, corporations, or governments. And what happens is that these people are abusing the trust that is bestowed upon them. And that is where blockchain comes in. You see, blockchain in its simplest form, the blockchain is a machine for creating trust. And so before we get into the technology of blockchain, I want you to understand the evolution of trust that we're seeing in society. Centuries ago, when we were grouped into disparate, small societies or communities, trust was only developed based on your relationship or your reputation that you had with your community. As societies and economies grew, this did not scale, and eventually we could not keep track of everyone's reputation, and so we needed these intermediaries and these third parties to broker trust and allow us to interact and transact with strangers. Well, today, with the invention with the internet and mobile devices, we're evolving past institutions and moving to this decentralized approach. We're seeing this with things like Uber and Airbnb, where we're allowing strangers to give us a ride or to allow us to stay in their home. The best example of this transition from local institutions to distributed comes with the example of news. You think about when communities were siloed and we didn't even have the telegram or the radio, the only news that you could find out was the news that was brought to you by your neighbors. Eventually, with the invention of the telegram and the radio, we found out information and news all around the world. But unfortunately, this technology was capitalized by corporations and institutions, and we have relied on them to provide us our news. But today, for me personally, I receive the bulk of my news from Twitter. Twitter is a truly distributed network where anyone around the world with access to the internet has the opportunity to be a reporter in 140 characters or less. I'm not relying on any intermediary or third party, but I can go directly to the source and to the community of strangers. It's no surprise that we're moving to this distributed approach, because it seems like there's headlines every day about fraud or data breaches, about these institutions that are abusing this trust. Just today, there was a news article that one of the credit report agencies in U.S. exposed data to over 146 million people in the U.S. That was today, like 30 minutes ago. And so we're seeing countless examples of our trust being abused and misused. But when you look out and see where are intermediaries in our lives, they are absolutely everywhere. You can't even keep track or name all the intermediaries that are in our society. And I was trying to explain this to my wife the other day, and she's like, but when I go to the grocery store, I'm able to just swipe the credit card and pay the grocery store directly for my groceries. And it made me laugh because, a credit card is just another intermediary. And so trying to help her understand this. The problem with intermediaries, the problem with these institutions is there's a trust tax associated with them. The first one is the cost. Whenever I do a credit card transaction, there's a 3.5% cost associated with that transaction. Or if I wanted to send money to friends or family in a different country, that's going to take 5 to 10% of that transaction. Second is the time. Again, in terms of sending money around the world, that's going to take, a week or two. And even if I had one bank account trying to send money to the other, that could also take 3 to 5 days. And so there's an enormous amount of inefficiencies that are involved with these intermediaries. And lastly is the risks associated. You see, these institutions are collecting all sorts of data and value that they become this honeypot for hackers and for malicious attackers for them to be this resource of value that is to be exposed. Now, we've had to use intermediaries. We've had no choice. Why? Because of what's called the double spend problem. You see, we're not able to send value the same way that we can send an email or a text message. Whenever we send an email, we're actually sending a copy of that message. Now imagine if I wanted to send money the same way as an email, and I'd be sending a copy of my $5 bill. Who would like to receive a copy of my $5? No one here, right? You want to ensure that I just don't still have that money that I give to you. Well, it wasn't until the 3rd of January 2009 that this problem was solved for the very first time. January 3rd, 2009 marked the genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain. And for the first time, we were able to send value digitally without relying on an intermediary. It was almost instantaneous and had very little risk and was almost very little cost. And that was all due to the underlying technology called blockchain. So what is blockchain? What is blockchain may be the most interesting and most popular question in 2017 around the world. And I'm going to do my best to explain this. I probably would need an hour, and I have about 10 minutes to go through this. At its core, the blockchain is composed of 4 components. It is a secure, shared, distributed ledger. Repeat that again. A shared, secured, distributed ledger. A ledger is really just a database of transactions, like your checkbook. It's shared like you would share a Google Doc, where everyone has access to it and everybody can contribute to it. Unlike Google Doc, it's distributed, meaning that there's no single point of failure, and instead it's it's duplicated on all of the computers connected to the network, and then it's secured through the highest level of cryptography. Now, that probably doesn't mean anything to you, so let's do a really quick example. Everyone you see that you all have your cameras out, please take a picture of this. What is this? These are 3 transactions, very simple. Now, stay with me here, but this is a ledger, and I have shared it with all of you. And those that took pictures now own their own copy of the ledger, and so in a sense, it's now distributed. Let's say I want that my computer goes down and this record gets deleted. Fortunately, because it's distributed, we still have the record. We still know the truth of how much money each person has. Or let's say some person in the back decides to manipulate this data and change the transactions. It wouldn't matter because the community as a whole would reject their claim, and we would continue to have the truth. So the truth is in the ledger instead of having to rely on an intermediary. Now, the real blockchain, in this case, the Bitcoin blockchain, every 10 minutes, the collection of transactions that occur on the network are collected into a container or a block. And that block is sealed up so that nobody can get a hold of those transactions, and it's sealed through cryptography. And that container, that block, is then connected to the previous block of transactions, which was connected to its previous block of transaction. And this is continued indefinitely. And this is then distributed on all the computers around the world. In reality, it's just a unique structure for a database. But you think about the implications of this. In order to hack or manipulate, change the transactions in any case, you would have to reverse engineer the cryptography for each transaction in each block, and then hack into every computer connected to the network. And in some cases, that's 30,000 different computers. That's just not going to happen. And so what have we created? We have created the Internet of Value, where anything of value can now be digitally represented on the blockchain and can be transferred to different parties without an intermediary. Not just currency, but that could be the rights to land, could be your identification, health records, rights to music, etc. Let's see if it can go on. All right, my clicker broke. What's my next slide? Here we go. So Bitcoin was obviously the first example of a digital asset, and it's been working for the last 8 years. There are now over thousands of digital assets and cryptocurrencies. One of the next most popular is Ethereum, and many people ask me, what's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum? And the easiest way to think of Ethereum is to think of the iPhone. The iPhone completely disrupted the mobile devices, especially the BlackBerry, because it could do more than just sending a message. What the iPhone enabled was building applications, apps, on top of this smartphone device. Likewise, with Ethereum, it can do so much more than just transferring currency. It enables the ability to build applications on top of the blockchain. And just like there are millions of applications in the App Store, there are going to be millions of applications or smart contracts built on the blockchain. The easiest way to think of a smart contract is a digital vending machine. A vending machine is a machine that it displays a contract between me and the machine that allows me to pay money, select a choice, and verifies that I've paid the right amount of money, and then delivers to me either a Coke or a candy bar. It doesn't really make sense to put anything else in a vending machine, and so we've been left with that. But now with smart contracts, which are just that, self-executing contracts, we can now bring this idea of a vending machine to so many more things. Think of a contract that you've used recently in your life. For me, it was the contract that I signed to become an employee, where I agreed to do a certain amount of work to get paid each month. And for me, I was in sales, and so depending on how much sales, depended how much I got paid. But in order to get paid, I had to send a report to my boss, who sent a report to her boss, who sent a report to the operations team, who sent a report to the finance team, and eventually the third-party payment provider sent a payment to my bank account. Well, a smart contract, on the other hand, could pull data directly from our CRM at the end of the month. It could require verification from one person, and upon their verification, value could be automatically delivered from my employer straight to my bank account without improving a lot of efficiencies and reducing a lot of costs. What are the implications? The implications are endless. The World Economic Forum conducted a survey where they got the results back that people expected that at least 10% of the global GDP will be stored on blockchain platforms by 2025. Today, cryptocurrencies have a market value of $150 billion. That's a lot. But 10% of global GDP is nearly $8 trillion. There's a lot of room to grow. This is an overwhelming list of the different possibilities that blockchain could be used for. The top left is the financial use cases, and obviously, since Bitcoin has been around the longest, there's the most ideas are around the financial use case. You have trading and equities and fixed income, and you even have real estate and insurance. The list goes on and on. Today, I'm going to talk about 6 use cases. First is around the financial institutions, where a company called Ripple is allowing to complete transactions in 8 seconds for a transaction to go across from Canada to Germany to 2 separate banks. You know, the way we have financial institutions now, they're siloed and they are very difficult to communicate with each other. Ripple is using blockchain to solve that problem. You have the whole remittances industry, which is a $600 billion market. Abra, for example, is commonly used in the US and is a $9 billion industry, serving the working class as they send money back home. What if that $9 billion could go back to the people that worked for that money? Abra is trying to solve that problem by allowing you to send money to family and friends via cryptocurrencies and then exchanging those cryptocurrencies for the local currency. You have insurance, where we can replace insurance companies with smart contracts. Lemonade is the world's first peer-to-peer insurance company that allowing people to accept claims and get paid on claims in less than 3 seconds. I don't know the phone number to my insurance company in 3 seconds. E-commerce is a huge opportunity where eBay is connecting buyers and sellers, but the blockchain and smart contracts could give the value back to the buyers and sellers instead of eBay. Or think of Uber. It's a $60 billion company. What if we could give that value back to the riders and the drivers, creating a lot of efficiencies? And then you have the idea of land titling. You see, there are instances around the world where corruption allows for government officials to accept bribes to wrongly associate land with other people. If you have a blockchain, which is an immutable ledger, which cannot be hacked or modified, we could have the truth to knowing who owns that asset and have the entire history of that asset. Hernando de Soto of Peru estimates that worldwide the value of dead capital, meaning in which people do not have legal title to their houses, cars, and other assets, is at $20 trillion. We have countries like the Republic of Georgia, Sweden, and Honduras that are exploring today the use of blockchain for land titling. I'm really excited about the ideas of supply chain, which is keeping track of products from its origin to the customer. What you can do with a shared ledger is share this record with your vendors, your suppliers, the shipment people, and even your competitors in a way so you have complete access to the information as this product gets shipped around the world. Walmart is using blockchain for their supply chain to ensure the quality of their pork as it comes, make sure that it gets sent from the right farms. And lastly, I want to talk about IoT. IoT is the Internet of Things. And as I talked about in the very beginning, the blockchain is a machine for creating trust. Well, with the Internet of Things, you have machines that are communicating to each other. And as these communications become more advanced, they're going to want to be able to transact, send value to each other. Well, this is supposed to be a video of Amos Services out of Southeast Asia, where they're created a POC for ride sharing, where you're able to use your smartphone and a QR code to pay, and use a smart contract to pay this machine. And when the machine receives the payment via cryptocurrency, it releases itself and allows you to then access that machine. Imagine if a smart home could sense that it was empty and could rent itself out on Airbnb. These are just some of the possibilities that we could explore with blockchain and smart contracts, and they're all being powered by cryptocurrencies. Now, just for a quick plug, since I am a representative of Microsoft, I guess I share with you what Microsoft's approach is in this. It's fourfold. One, we're chain agnostic, meaning you can bring any blockchain to our ecosystem. You can use Ethereum, you can use R3 Corda, even IBM's solution of Hyperledger. We want to focus on the middleware, which is the infrastructure and the tooling for you to be able to spin up a solution very quickly, so you're not bogged down into how to set up a node on the blockchain. Third, we've created a POC framework so that when you bring your smart contract and your metadata, you will already have a website and a mobile app that exposes all of your transaction data, the users, in a very clean and beautiful UI. And then lastly, we recently announced the COCO framework, which allows you to speed up the transaction speed as well as increase security so you can determine who has access to your blockchain. Now, I'm going to welcome up the rest of the panel. Thank you for your time. I'm actually going to be speaking tomorrow, doing a general Q&A session about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and welcome you all to that tomorrow. Thank you.